Before anything else, get in here, drop a like, and check if your subscription is active, because that helps a lot to keep bringing you all the information about Manchester City so you don't miss anything that happens with the team. It's quick, it costs you nothing, and it makes a huge difference. Now let's go straight to what matters, because the moment is heavy, full of important news that hits the supporter right in the heart. The atmosphere at the Etihad has changed sharply in a matter of days. What seemed like just an intense run of fixtures has turned into a full-on alarm situation, especially in the defensive system. The name at the center of all this is Joško Gvardiol, the Croatian center-back, who arrived with the status of being an essential piece for the team's solidity, is now going through one of the most delicate periods of his career. After the 1-1 draw against Chelsea came the confirmation nobody wanted to hear. A tibia fracture, picked up in the second half of the match, has ruled the defender out for a long and indefinite spell. This isn't a minor issue, something solved with just a few days of recovery. It's surgery, it's long-term treatment, it's a real risk of missing the rest of the season, and even worse, a concrete possibility of not playing in the next World Cup. Gvardiol himself has spoken about it. It was not a dramatic message, but it was honest enough to make it clear that he understands how serious what happened is. He acknowledged he is facing a tough moment, stated that he will not allow the injury to define his career, and thanked everyone for the support he has received. He said he will fight every day to come back better, calling himself a warrior inside Manchester City. But when he also mentioned how much Croatia means to him, many people picked up the subtext. He is already working mentally with the real possibility of not being ready for big commitments, either for the club or for the national team. This is the kind of absence that affects not only the fixture list, but also the dressing room, the confidence, the entire planning. As if that were not enough, the match against Chelsea brought more problems. Ruben Dias came off feeling something, asking for medical assessment after muscular discomfort. John Stones remains out, with no clear prediction for his return. Nathan Ake needs to have his minutes carefully managed so he does not break down physically. Suddenly, what has always been one of Pep Guardiola's squad strengths, depth, has turned into a kind of dangerous jigsaw puzzle, with few pieces available and many competitions ahead. It is no exaggeration to say that the defensive system has gone into emergency mode. The immediate response came quickly, and was a clear message about how serious the situation is. The club decided to recall Max Alleyne from his loan at Watford in the Championship. The youngster had been getting important minutes, developing in a competitive environment, but necessity spoke louder. His early return shows that Manchester City simply cannot wait for everyone to recover at their own pace. There is the Premier League, there are European competitions, there are domestic cups, and there is pressure for results in every game. A reduced squad at center-back, in this context, is an invitation to disaster. At the same time as they sort out internally what can be solved inside the club, they are looking outwards. The name of Marc Guéhi, Crystal Palace defender and a regular in England call-ups, has gained strength as an immediate target. Days earlier, the tone was different. There was no real mood for market moves. The manager preferred to talk about internal solutions and about waiting for more detailed assessments from the medical department. But football changes at a brutal speed. The draw with Chelsea did not just take 2 points off the table, it also took away much of the calm. When you look at the situation coldly, everything makes sense. Guéhi is an undisputed starter, a defensive reference point, a natural leader, and he is in a moment of high valuation. His contract is nearing its end, and that completely changes Crystal Palace's stance. If they do not sell now, they risk seeing him leave for free. At the same time, several clubs are already monitoring the situation, which puts Manchester City into a battle that involves money, urgency, and sporting need. For those who see Gvardiol sidelined for months and still live with uncertainty around Ruben Dias, it is hard to imagine this interest not turning into a concrete bid. Supporters feel this urgency. It is not just the fear of losing matches, it is the awareness that the season can slip away in small details. In the closing stages against Chelsea, when the team started being hit on the counter, it became clear how much the lack of experienced options at the back weighs. You lose security in your build-up, you lose aggression in your defensive transitions, you lose that sense of control that has become a trademark of Manchester City in recent years. Every cross seems more dangerous. Every opposition counterattack starts to generate apprehension. Gvardiol, beyond his technical qualities, offers something that cannot be easily replaced: personality. He shows for the ball, he does not hide, he is brave in duels and carries a competitive energy that is contagious. When a player like that is out for so long, the team has to reorganize its internal hierarchy. Who takes responsibility? Who organizes the line? Who corrects positioning in moments of pressure? All of this now has to be rebuilt in the middle of the season, under intense scrutiny and with a packed schedule. While the doctors work to define timeframes and protocols, Pep is forced to rethink his structures. Some youngsters get chances earlier than ideal, not because of planning but because of necessity. Max Allen is the clearest example of this. His immediate return shows trust, but also reveals the lack of alternatives. There is an expectation that he will already be available for upcoming fixtures and could even be used in domestic cup games. The leap is huge, from the championship to a team that is fighting for everything at once. It is accelerated development with no comfort zone. His return also ties in with an idea the club has been developing for years: to form players in a genuinely competitive environment, sending them on loan, giving them game time, and then reintegrating them when they are more ready. The difference is that this time the process has been sped up by circumstances. Nobody at the club planned to depend so heavily on a center-back still in development at this particular point of the season. But football does not respect perfect plans. It tests your capacity to adapt. In parallel, the transfer market becomes a kind of silent battleground. The talks for Marc Guéhi make it clear that Manchester City are not prepared to watch the season become complicated just for lack of bodies. If scans confirm long absences for Gvardiol and Ruben Dias, the tendency is for negotiations to accelerate. Crystal Palace, fully aware of the contractual risk, also have to decide whether to keep the player to the end or turn the situation into a strategic sale. There is money involved, but there is also sporting ambition on both sides. This entire scenario creates a mixture of concern and expectation among the fans. The possible absence of Gvardiol for 4 or 5 months affects major objectives: the domestic title race, the European path, and even the performance of a Croatia side that counts on him as a defensive pillar. The impact is collective and individual at the same time. When the player himself suggests, between the lines, that he may not be ready for the next big competitions, the sense of reality hits harder. Supporters feel it, talk about it, debate it, and try to work out what the next step will be. Trust the academy? Spend big now? Wait for players to recover? None of the answers is simple because each one carries its own risks. Betting only on youngsters might expose them to a level of pressure they are not yet prepared for. Spending heavily in January might compromise long-term planning. Waiting too long might cost points and trophies. That is why this is a moment for decisions and for a cool reading of the situation. At the same time, there is a human element that cannot be ignored. Gvardiol is not just a name on a tactics board. He is a young athlete with huge potential who now finds himself forced to stop, start again, relearn movements, and look after his mind. A tibia fracture is no small thing. It involves physical and emotional pain. The way he described the moment shows maturity, but also reveals the weight of what is happening. He talks about getting back up, about not letting this define him, about love for the club and for the national team. These are words that come from someone who knows he will go through months of recovery and the silence of being away from the pitch. Inside the squad, situations like this usually bring the group even closer together. Players rally round, dedicate wins to their injured teammate, find extra motivation to get through the difficult stretch. At the same time, the need for new leaders emerges. Someone has to take over the talking on the pitch. Someone has to marshal the defense. Someone has to become a reference point in his absence. This is a natural process in big teams. The draw with Chelsea, which in another context would have been just a slip-up, has gone down as the match that turned a key in Manchester City's season. That was when 2 points were dropped, but it was also when the reality of the injuries really hit. From that final whistle onwards, everything became more urgent. Scans, internal meetings, decisions about loans, transfer contacts, strategy tweaks. A club that always organizes itself with the bigger picture in mind now has to react in the short term. The fan base watches all of this with a mix of anxiety and hope. There is trust in the work, in the squad, in the manager. But there is also a clear understanding that football does not forgive defensive instability. Every match becomes a final. Every aerial duel gains importance. Every recovery run becomes another reason to believe. The name of Marc Guéhi appears as a possible immediate reinforcement, and the return of Max Allen symbolizes the bet on youth in the middle of the chaos. Right now, the questions multiply. How will the team reorganize without Gvardiol? Will Ruben Dias's injury be long-term or short-term? Does Marc Guéhi arrive now or only in the summer? Can Max Allen cope with the pressure? How many points could this cost in the Premier League and in Europe? These are legitimate doubts, part of what fans do, and they show the scale of the impact that a single injury can have when it hits the heart of the defensive system. Manchester City are living, therefore, a sporting crossroads. It is not a technical crisis. It is not a collective drop in performance that was planned. It is a shock caused by physical issues that were out of anyone's control, combined with a draining schedule and a level of demand that very few teams in the world have to deal with. The next few weeks will demand quick responses, assertive decisions, and, above all, an ability to adapt. Following on from the scenario that has opened up, the team need to find answers on the pitch while off its strategic decisions are being taken at high speed. This is exactly the kind of moment in which the squad shows how much it has matured over the last seasons. Many of the players have already experienced maximum pressure situations, big finals, moments when every detail weighed a ton, but the accumulation of absences at the back creates a different sort of challenge, more silent and constant. It is not just about one decisive match, but about an entire run in which every game demands extra focus and creative solutions. Manchester City's upcoming performances will be marked by subtle adjustments. Pep, who is used to varying formations and creating overloads all over the pitch, now has to do that knowing he does not have all his usual pieces. The build-up from the back, for example, may need to be simplified at times, not because of a lack of quality, but to protect young players who are only now getting their chance. Defensive transition will also have to be even more coordinated, since communication within a reshaped backline takes time to reach the ideal level. Every marking trigger, every covering run, every set piece becomes a key issue. In this context, names like Ruben Dias and John Stones gain even more weight, even while they are out. The absence of natural leaders means the rest of the squad has to fill that void with attitude. Holding midfielders speak up more. Fullbacks shout instructions. The goalkeeper becomes an even clearer commanding voice. The defensive system is not made only of center backs, and that is a point that will be maximized now. The midfield needs to protect the spaces between the lines better. The attack has to start the press with intensity to reduce opposition attacks, and the collective becomes more important than any individual quality. When you look at Gvardiol, the feeling is paradoxical. On one hand, there is sadness about the injury and the long recovery ahead. On the other, the impact he has already had at the club shows how quickly his presence became viewed as essential. That blend of physical strength, reading of the game, and technical quality turned the Croatian into a trusted piece in a short time. Losing someone like that is never simple, and that is exactly why all the defensive planning needs to be redrawn. It is not enough to swap one name for another. The whole dynamic has to be rebuilt. Meanwhile, Marc Guéhi remains at the center of discussions, not only because of what he can offer technically, but because of what it would symbolize to react in the transfer market to a serious problem. Signing a ready-made player, used to the Premier League and to the pace of English football, would be a way of minimizing short-term risks. He brings intensity, good positioning, and a competitive personality, characteristics that are highly valued in a high-pressure context. On top of that, he would arrive with leadership experience picked up at Crystal Palace, something that can help straight away in a dressing room now dealing with major absences. The possibility of a deal in January has always been seen as difficult, but Guehi's contractual situation changes the rules of the game. With his deal nearing its end, Crystal Palace have to weigh up whether it is worth keeping him until the end of the season and losing him for nothing, or whether it is better to sell now and guarantee a significant return. At the same time, the player himself will surely want to be in a highly competitive environment, fighting for trophies and playing European football, which always weighs heavily in any professional decision. All these variables pile up and turn the negotiation into something alive, dynamic, and subject to rapid shifts. In the middle of all this, Max Alleyne finds himself facing a chance that could define his career. It is not common for a young defender to be called back in a hurry and immediately placed on a path towards real minutes. That demands emotional maturity and absolute focus. He arrives knowing that every mistake will be more scrutinized, but also that every solid performance can speed up his consolidation in the first team. His time in the championship helped him to toughen up, especially given the physical intensity of that league. Now he brings that experience into an even higher level. The next matches will be genuine tests of endurance, not only because of the quality of the opposition, but because of the need to manage minutes, rotate the squad, avoid new injuries, and, at the same time, keep the level of performance high. There is no room for relaxation. The domestic title race remains tight. European competitions demand near perfection in knockout ties, and the domestic cups are also part of the club's ambitions. It is a scenario in which every medical, technical, and tactical decision has a direct impact on the table and on the season's targets. Communication with the supporters also plays an important role now. Messages like Gvardiol's help strengthen the bond between player and stands. When he talks about getting up again for the club and for Croatia, he shares the weight of the situation and at the same time transmits strength. Fans understand that the player suffers just as they do when he cannot be on the pitch, and that reinforces the support during his recovery. This positive environment is essential for long rehabilitation processes, which often test the mind more than the body. In parallel, his teammates look at the situation and find extra motivation. It is common for the group to dedicate their efforts to someone who cannot play, turning an absence into fuel. Winning for him, seeing out a result for him, going through to the next round for him. This kind of internal narrative is natural and has a real impact on how the team behaves on the pitch. Unity is never too much in a moment like this. It is also inevitable to mention the international impact. Croatia, who see Gvardiol as one of their defensive pillars, may have to plan their fixtures without him. That changes call-ups, system dynamics, and, above all, expectations for major tournaments. When you talk about 4 to 5 months of recovery, the uncertainty around match fitness and physical condition on his return is huge. Nobody comes back immediately at their peak after a tibia fracture. There are stages, gradually lifted limitations, time to regain confidence in more physical duels. At Manchester City, the coaching staff will have to distribute defensive responsibilities intelligently. Perhaps the fullbacks play more inside. Perhaps the holding midfielders sit deeper in certain phases of the game. Perhaps the team presses less aggressively high up at times to protect the back line. All of this has to happen without losing the team's identity, which is built on control, possession, and aggression with the ball. It is a delicate balance between maintaining the essence and respecting the reality of the players available. The fans have already understood that this is a phase in which backing the team is as important as analyzing it. Criticism will always exist. It is part of football, but there is also a recognition that some situations go beyond any planning. You can manage the squad, control workloads, prepare players, and still the game throws up unforeseen events like this. What matters now is the response, and the club's recent history shows that they rarely fail to respond. The immediate future will have to be built on 3 pillars: recovery, adaptation, and decision. Recovery for the injured players, with no rushing, to avoid setbacks. Adaptation of the game model to the squad that is actually available, making the most of the characteristics of those who are fit. And decision-making in the transfer market, evaluating whether Mark Guehi or another name might be the piece that brings stability to the defensive system until the end of the season. None of this is simple, but all of it is necessary. In the midst of all this reshaping, results are still demanded. Every league round brings a new layer of pressure. Every competition requires total focus. Fans will see a team that more than ever needs to be solidary on the pitch. Compact lines, collective sacrifice, constant concentration. This is the kind of phase in which defensive details decide championships. A defended corner, a block on a shot, a recovery run at full speed can be worth as much as a decisive goal. If there is one thing Manchester City's recent history teaches, it is that this team does not give in to difficulties. It faces them, adjusts, and carries on competing at the highest level. Losing Gvardiol for a long period is a hard blow, but it is not a sentence. It is a big obstacle that forces everyone to step up a level in responsibility and focus. Youngsters will be tested, veterans will be under scrutiny, and the coaching staff will be challenged to find creative solutions. In the end, when he returns, he will find a club that has been through all of this, and if it reacts well, will be even stronger. Gvardiol himself will have the chance to turn this phase into fuel, as he hinted in his message. To come back more mature, better prepared mentally, and ready to resume his role as a defensive protagonist both at Manchester City and for Croatia. For now, all that remains is to follow Ruben Dias's scans, keep an eye on John Stones' steps back, see how Max Allain fits into the first-team squad, and monitor closely any move around Mark Guehi. Each of these pieces directly influences how the team will look over the next few weeks. The supporters stay alert, living every update, every interview, every hint of recovery intensely. If you have made it this far, it is because you really live the club and feel every bit of news as if you were inside the dressing room. So back the work, drop a like, check your subscription, and turn on notifications so you keep receiving all the information about Manchester City. That helps massively and makes sure you don't miss any chapter of this decisive moment in the season.